I am back. I am back. It's been about a month since I've done a video. My last one was the end of 2024, in which I did a tail end review of Ardbeg N.O. In this video, we're going to look at the Aberlour A'bunadh Alba. No, not ABBA, a Swedish pop band. Alba. Now, why do they call this Alba? Because Alba, Quercus alba, is a type of American oak. There are a number of different American oaks, Quercus garryana, for example, but the most common is Quercus alba, and then there's a subcategory of Quercus alba called chinkapin. You may have heard of that. There's some distilleries that are using chinkapin. But Quercus alba is the most commonly used white oak for bourbon cask. So the idea is, if you knew what alba was, you would know this is a bourbon cask. So I want to talk a little bit more about the different type of casks and cask sizes before I get into this whiskey. Cask types. In order to be labeled Scotch whiskey, the spirit must be matured in oak cask. The term oak refers to a tree or shrub of the genus Quercus. There are approximately 600 individual species that belong to this genus. There are 5 different subgenres. 1 is Quercus, which is white oak. 2, Labote, which is red oak. 3, Mesobalanus. 4, Cerus. And 5, Protobalanus. Only Quercus, white oak, is suitable for aging spirits. The other varieties of oaks either produce wood whose grain is too coarse and permeable for barrel making, or that contains such high levels of tannins in the wood that it would impart an unacceptable level of bitterness to the aging spirit. There are several subspecies of Quercus that are used for maturing whiskey. Quercus alba is an American oak cask which may be ex-bourbon cask or ex-sherry cask from Jerez, Spain. About 90% of all casks in Scotch warehouses are ex-bourbon casks. Chinkapin is a subspecies of Quercus alba. Contrary to the assertions of many whiskey experts, not all bourbons are aged in Quercus alba. For example, Buffalo Trace's distilleries the Charter Oak Straight Bourbon was matured in French oak. They also fail to mention the previous contents of the cask, which can have a greater impact on the aromas and flavors of a whiskey, as sherry is traditionally matured in Quercus alba. Quercus robur is a European oak used to mature sherry as well as many wines. Oftentimes, a cask may be designated according to the region it came from, such as Spanish oak, when it is actually Quercus robur from France that was then used to mature sherry. Quercus petraea. Quercus petraea is also known as Hungarian oak, Cecil oak, Cornish oak, Irish oak, Durmas oak, and it's a species of oak tree native to most of Europe. Quercus crispula, also known as Mizunara, also known as Japanese oak. It is native to Hokkaido, Japan's most northern prefecture. It is one of the most rare and expensive oaks in the world. Cask sizes. The size of the cask has a significant impact on the rate of maturation. So you have quarter casks, bourbon barrels, hogsheads, and sherry butts. A quarter cask is 1/4 of an American standard barrel and holds about 50 liters. Quarter casks are relatively uncommon and more expensive to use, but offer a greater degree of wood contact. Bourbon barrels. A bourbon barrel is approximately 190 to 200 liters. A bourbon barrel may be shipped from the United States intact or shipped as staves and then be rebuilt to be called an American standard barrel. It's the same thing. Hogsheads. A hogshead is approximately 250-liter oak barrel. Coopers break down 5 ex-bourbon barrels into staves and reassemble them with new and larger heads. Hogshead casks are often used to age single malt whiskey as they are large enough to hold the product of a single distillation run. In addition to their size and the type of wood they are made from, hogshead casks are also distinguished by their shape. They are typically longer and narrower than other types of whiskey barrels, which can help to concentrate the flavors of the whiskey as it matures. Sherry butts. A sherry butt is an approximately 500-liter cask. Sherry is a fortified, dry or sweet Spanish wine. There are several styles, including Fino, Amontillado, Oloroso, which is the most common, and Palacatado. Another is Pedro Jimenez, a very sweet sherry made from Pedro Jimenez grapes that are allowed to dry and become raisinated before being fermented. It is the sweetest and most viscous of all the sherries. It is intensely raisiny, syrupy, and dark. Globally, the popularity of sherry has declined with the exception of the UK, which imports 29% of the world's sherry. Sherry butts are typically made from American white oak or Quercus alba, but they can also be made from French oak. Ex-sherry casks are sometimes referred to as Spanish oak. The Aberlour A'bunadh Alba Speyside single malt Scotch whisky. A'bunadh means the original in Scotch Gaelic. A'bunadh Alba is made in homage to Aberlour's founder, James Fleming. It was matured in ex-American oak bourbon cask, Quercus alba. This is batch number 6. It is non-chill filtered, has natural color, spotted at 62% alcohol by volume, and sells for around $78 in my neighborhood. So you said, oh, okay, so now if I see Alba, Quercus alba, then I know it is a bourbon cask. And you would be wrong. And you would be wrong. Or I would say not necessarily right. This is the Aberlour A'bunadh that most people are familiar with. 100% Oloroso sherry cask. Guess what? If you were paying attention in the video, it also 99% likely that it is also Quercus alba, because traditionally most sherry casks are Quercus alba. Now, a little comment about sherry casks. Originally, sherry casks were transportation casks. They weren't from the Solera. They were transportation casks. They were the casks used to get the sherry from Jerez region of Spain over to Scotland, and then like to get these casks sitting on the dock, and people are like, we got these sherry casks, what should we do with these? Oh, I know, let's put spirit in these and then we'll make Scotch whiskey using sherry casks. That was around 1981. Jerez goes, you know what, in order to protect the integrity of our sherry wine, we're no longer going to transport in sherry casks, rather we're going to bottle within the country and then export the bottles. Rarely, if ever, if you got a sherry cask, is it going to be a cask from a Solera. What the Solera? Solera is a fractional blending system in which wine goes from cask to cask to cask to cask. First one's called the Cordera, last one's called the Solera. The whole thing is a Solera system, and then from at the end of the last one, the Solera, that then goes into the bottle. Those casks are used until they're falling apart. It is very rare that you're actually getting a cask, a puncheon, from an actual Solera. However, I do have a video coming up of another whiskey, an American single malt, that is aged in one of those casks, or multiple of those casks. Well, usually what you're getting is, from a sherry cask, although it's a sherry cask, is the sherry has been matured, it has been finished, but before it's bottled, they put it into a maturation cask, or a holding cask. I think it was a holding cask. It sits in there for a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. The oak is soaking up some of that Oloroso sherry, and then they take that sherry from that, put it into a bottle, and then sell it on the market, and then that cask goes to a distillery. So, both of these, more than likely, are Quercus alba casks. Obviously, just look at the color of these. These are very, 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 very different. Now, I've had people comment and say, why do you talk about so much about the previous contents, since it's the type of oak that matters? If that's what you think, You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know, you're wrong. Okay, I mean, just look at the color of these. These are non-chill filtered, natural color, right? The biggest contributor to the character is going to be the previous contents. Yes, does the oak make a difference? Yes, I'm not saying the oak doesn't make a difference. However, I will put $10,000 on the table and line up, say, 5 or 6 sherries. That was 5 are being done in Quercus Alba. The 1 is being done in a European oak, Quercus Robur. And I will give you $10,000 if you put $1,000 on the table, and you can tell me which one is the Quercus Robur versus the other ones. Because unless you are a master sommelier or advanced sommelier who's just spent a buttload of time studying sherry, you cannot tell the difference. You're not going to notice. The differences are going to be so minor, you are not going to notice. Let alone a second or third use of those casks in which you're putting spirit into it. So each time you use a cask, you're moving a little bit away from distinguishing what the type of cask it was. So beyond knowing sherries, if you're not talking about a cask and what spirit went into, and maybe it's not even the first use, maybe it's the second use, the nuanced difference is so minor, most people aren't going to notice. Okay, so if you got someone who's going like this, oh yes, this is a European oak rather than an American oak, looking at it, and they're talking about a whiskey, I can tell you what, they're blowing smoke up your skirt. All right, they're blowing smoke up your skirt. I will put money on the table, and I'm not joking. I will put money on the table. If they put down $1,000, I'll put down $10,000, and if they can get it, I give them 10 grand, and if they don't get it, I get the 1,000, and I can bet you nobody's going to put their money on the table. No, I don't care how much experience you have. Nobody's putting their money on the table. All right. Here's some other things that are going on, which leads to some of the confusion. Okay. If there's one thing I do, it's paying attention to the details. I've been thus far to 49 distilleries in Scotland. And as I'm looking around, I'm paying attention to the casks. I'm paying attention to where the casks come from. Some distilleries have a sole source for their casks and what bodegas in Spain they're getting their casks from. Some, you got a little of this, you got a little of that, you got a little of this, you got a little of that from different bodegas. So, if they have, I'm just going to use round numbers for the sake of argument. If they have 100 sherry casks, 75 of those might be from one bodega, 10 might be from another bodega, another 5 from another bodega, another 5 might be from another bodega. Out of those 100 casks, maybe 90 of those might be Quercus Alba, and those other maybe 5, maybe 10 might be actually Quercus Robur. Now they're going to take those casks and the spirit matured in those casks, and they're going to marry that. So now, potentially, if they're using casks from multiple bodegas that previously had their sherry casks and the matured spirit, and now they're marrying them together, there's a possibility, unless they're telling you 100% from a particular bodega, or 100% this is Quercus Alba that previously contained sherry, or this is Quercus Robur that previously contained sherry. Guess what? The sherry casks are actually a blend of Quercus Alba and Quercus Robur. All right? And here's another thing that's going to blow your mind. A lot of times they're called Spanish oak, but they're not using Spanish oak. It's not oak from a Spanish tree. They're just calling it Spanish oak rather than a Quercus Robur or American oak because, well, the cask came from Spain, so it's American oak. It's Spanish oak. The cask came from Spain, so therefore it's a Spanish oak. No, it's Quercus Alba. It's a sherry cask. The cask is from Spain, yes, but it's actually Quercus Alba. All right, now I've been going on and on about this, but reading labels, reading articles, reading online sources, and paying attention to myself in my travels, you kind of start to go, and you pay attention, you look at notes and go, okay, there's a lot of, I'm going to be nice, bovine scatology that gets put out there, and because someone has degrees or years of experience or whatever else, and they say something, the people go, okay. No. So, if they really wanted to get accurate about what they're using, they would say, this is matured in Quercus alba, previously bourbon cask. Or they could even say, or a hogshead. If they took the cask apart and then we put them together. If they really want to get into the details, for example, for the sake of argument, let's say Aberlour uses 100% from one particular bodega. They could say, this is matured in Quercus alba that previously contained Oloroso sherry. Not just sherry, but Oloroso sherry. Because sometimes you'll see Scotch whiskies, it just say sherry, and they don't even get specific about Oloroso sherry, because there are different types of sherry: Fino, Amontillado, Palo Cortado, Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez. And maybe it actually didn't come from a Solera. It was a sherry-styled wine made in Jerez, rather than one of these fractionally blended sherries from a Solera. You say, really? Does that really happen? Yes. So all they're doing is they're allowing it to have some oxidative aging, maturation, to give it that sort of Oloroso character. So they'll just say sherry cask, and you have no idea whether that was a sherry seasoned cask. Obviously, more than likely, it's not going to be from a Solera. And of course, since the early 1980s, they've quit using transportation casks. All right, I've gone on and on, but I just wanted to perhaps clear the air a little bit. So, Quercus alba, bourbon cask. Quercus alba, sherry cask. I've already reviewed this whiskey. This was like a batch 64. Absolutely fantastic. If you I put it into my top 10, or into my top 10 cask strength whiskeys. So technically, these aren't cask strength; they're batch strength. But being at 62% ABV, and this is 59.9. Hey, it's cask strength, even though they're making a batch from multiple casks. All right, let's get into this. So, I am much more of a sherry fan than I am a bourbon cask fan. I like them both. I'm actually pretty flexible in what I like. I like everything. I like bourbons. I like Canadian whiskeys. I like Japanese whiskeys. I like rye, although not as much on the rye. I like Scotch whiskey. I like Irish whiskey. I like peated. I like non-peated. But the ones I like the most are going to be sherry single malts, sherry cask single malts that are peated, that have some sweetness, and then have some savoriness. That's probably my favorite general overall profile. However, I know there are some people that are not as big on the sherry, and if it's overly sherry, that's just not their thing, because sometimes you can get some little bit of a sulfury note, not quite, maybe some matchstick note. Sometimes they can come across, you might even think there might be slightly peated barley going on there, but actually no, that's just a slight smokiness. I actually like that. Slight smokiness coming from a sherry cask. If you prefer the bourbon cask, the Aberlour A'bunadh Alba is going to be for you. No age statement, but it doesn't come across as young. What you get, so from a bourbon you typically get some sort of caramel corn, something like that. And then you get the intense cask notes, cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe clove, those baking spices. And if they have rye in the mash, you get a little bit of spiciness or herbal note from the rye. What you're getting from this is all the cask notes from a bourbon. Cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, lots of vanilla, a little bit of cardamom, a hint of oakiness, But because it's a malt, you do get that malty character going on there. You're not getting any of the corn notes that you would from a bourbon. So this is sort of a bourbon lover's single malt. There's sort of a floral note, fruit notes, canned peaches, apple pie. So you get like baked apples along with the cinnamon, which gives it an apple pie character. Slight floral note on the palate. At this ABV, it does have some tingling going on there. There's a wee bit of a bite. So I like to put just a little bit. This isn't quite a full teaspoon of water in there. And actually, I'm going to put some of the water back in there. Summertime, there's some whiskeys that I like on rocks. In summertime, I lean towards bourbons. During the summertime, if you chill a whiskey, you'll get more of the bourbon cask and less of the spirit notes. So if you chill a whiskey, it brings out more of the vanilla, the cinnamon, all the spices. You're going to get less of the fruit characteristics or the fermentation characteristics. This needs to be brought down a little bit. Now, if this is maybe your second dram, you've had something else, by that time maybe you're a little numb and you're not going to notice it. Not a major change in terms of the nose. The maltiness has showed up perhaps a little bit more. On the palate, it's creamy, it's silky, it has got a real nice round mouthfeel, and it has a little bit of heft in terms of weight, even with a little bit of water. Just a dab of water takes away some of that tingle, which is really nice. And yet it is so full flavored, it really, really, really delivers. I really like this whiskey. There are times in which I am going to be in a mood for a whiskey like this. And this is what I'm going to reach for, particularly in the summertime. This is going to be a whiskey, if it's a real hot day, I'm probably going to actually reach for it and want to put it on ice. Because frankly, it doesn't lose a whole lot. With this high ABV, it doesn't lose a whole lot when you put it on ice. I think it's absolutely fantastic, particularly if you are that bourbon cask fan, or if you're just a straight up bourbon fan and you want to get into scotches, single malts, and so forth. Then I'm going to highly recommend it. What do I give in terms of score? I'm going to go solid 89 points. A solid 89 points. What would I think would get up over 90 points? A little bit more maturation. It doesn't show any youth notes. It doesn't have like that baby vomit green character, that new Mickey saccharine character. It doesn't have any of that. But I think a little bit in the mid palate would show up a little bit better if it had a little bit more maturation. But as it is, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now, if you don't want something that is this high ABV, something perhaps a little bit more approachable, you just sort of, putting your toes into it, might want to check out the Glenfiddich 14-year-old. This is, I think, only available here in the United States. Glenfiddich 14-year-old. It is also American oak. It's American or bourbon cask. The Glenfiddich, and this is probably at 40 or 43. It's at 43% alcohol by volume. So similar in profile in terms of those oak characteristics and the fruit characteristics, but a lot lower ABV and easier to approach. And I've done a full review of this one. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. Alrighty, if you like watching my videos, I'd ask that you subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a thumbs up, and if you've tried the Aberlour A'bunadh Alba, and you liked it, let me know what batch you had and what you thought in the comment section down below. And until next time, Slanja. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.